Welcome to the Think Podcast.
Would you consider belief in the Bible in itself a leap of faith?
Can you define leap of faith?
Well, just jumping to the belief that it is true based on nothing but that.
Okay. Give me an example of a belief that you would say is not a leap of faith.
Being able to replicate experiments, and let's just say I want to see atoms. And I hear about them on the news and all that, crap. And I want to see them for myself. Well, I'll buy a microscope myself and look at them. I can do that. I can actively look at what is happening in these via the machines.
Sure.
But I couldn't see, I couldn't actively replicate, nor could I see what Jesus did. All I have is the writings if he did something at some point.
Okay. So you're saying because the Bible has historical truth claims in it, and we can't, obviously there's no way to reduplicate history, therefore in some regard it's a leap of faith. Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm not saying that, it's a truth history. I'm saying more of we haven't seen anything that really can replicate such a thing. It's essentially just, believing something happened because someone said. It's essentially just folk history written into a book. That's really all it is. I mean, there's contradictory claims from essentially across the entirety of the Middle East of other individuals. Just example in the Quran, they mention Jesus under a different name, but not as some prophet, but more as some heavily religious individual. I can't remember.
No, well, in Islam, in the Quran, he's called Isa, and he is called the Messiah and a prophet, but he's not. So that's not accurate. But
the prophet.
He's not the last prophet. They think that Muhammad was the last prophet, but just in terms of historical study, I mean, you always go with the source that was closer to the actual events.
How do you know it was closer to the actual event?
Well, because we know when the Bible was written. I mean, we've got textual criticism on the Bible. We know the Bible.
Yeah, we know when it was written. Yes.
Right. So, but hold on a second. Your question was, how do we know the Bible was written closer to the actual events? Because we know the Bible was written in the first century, between let's say 63 and 95, depending on when you date the Book of Revelation. We also know that the Quran was not written any earlier than the 600s. So, I mean, there's a gap of over half a millennium there. So, it's really not germane to what Jesus was like, unless you're a Muslim and you just, sort of start with the presupposition that the Quran is true, which I don't think I hear you saying that.
I'm not.
Obviously, right. So your statement about, going to get a microscope and look at atoms and things like that. So, there are assumptions bound up in that. You're not just getting a microscope. You're not just engaging in scientific inquiry. You're making a lot of assumptions that you take for granted there, which I think are perfectly fine assumptions. The question is which worldview accounts for them. The assumption that, or the prior belief, we can call it, I don't want to call it, it's not necessarily a bad assumption, but the idea that your eyes are going to work, that your eyes and your brain and your mind work together to take in data and come to true conclusions about the universe. The idea that there really is such a thing as atoms. The idea that the people who have gone before you, who have taught you about atoms and who have seen atoms through microscopes, weren't lying, that it'd be wrong to lie, and that the universe behaves in a consistent, reliable way such that just because there were atoms 500 years ago, they haven't just gone away suddenly. The universe behaves in a consistent way. What I'm saying is those are all prior assumptions that you have to bring to your scientific inquiry, that if you start from the belief that the Bible is true and God is there, all those assumptions are perfectly rational, perfectly in line with that first presupposition. And you can do something like scientific inquiry and not be surprised that, hey, atoms are still there. But if you start without God, what you're left with is an irrational universe that you have to try to understand rationally. And that is, it's a contradictory, it's a self-defeating endeavor from the start.
Acts rationally.
Right, the universe acts rationally, but that's a Christian presupposition. The universe acts rationally. If you're a Christian, it makes sense to say the universe acts rationally. If you're not a Christian, you have no reason to think that the universe acts rationally, philosophically speaking. I'm not saying for you the universe doesn't act rationally. I'm saying you need to give an accounting for that rationality within your own scheme, like based on your own starting principles. And if you're starting without God, you do not have a starting point. You don't even have a reference point for understanding one other thing in the universe, even yourself, because everything is. Go ahead.
Well, but the understanding. So I never came to the. I'm not assuming that the universe acts in a rational sense. In fact, from the perception of right now and this current time, nothing can necessarily act rational. What acts on Earth fundamentally won't act the same on Mars. Lower gravity, different.
Yeah, but that statement that you're making right now is a rationalist statement about the universe. You understand that the laws of physics are constant and that if you change conditions, those laws are going to be instantiated in different ways. You're describing a rational universe.
Well, I'm describing the current state of our general area.
Yeah, but
we can apply our rationality to maybe our local solar system, maybe even a couple of outer planets that are around, maybe a few meteors too. But to apply that purely to every other planet that is out of our solar system and work, we can barely tell if we even know if everything will actually work on a full scale on Mars, let alone even on our local moon.
Floken, what you're doing is right now you're describing a state of affairs in the universe that is rational. You're saying that certain things behave a certain way in this place, but if you go somewhere else, you can expect them to behave differently. You're describing things in a.
I'm not saying that they. I'm expecting.
Floken, let me finish. Hold on. Let me finish that thought. What I'm saying is, you are making rational statements about the universe as if your words correspond to an external world that is going to behave in the way that you're describing it. So whether or not you and I describe the universe in a different way, which I'm not sure that we do, but let's say that we do, we have to make rational sense out of the universe. If you start with God, that is an endeavor that makes perfect sense. If you start without God, you have not even the first reference point to make sense of anything in the cosmos whatsoever. Everything must be defined in reference to something else. The number 2 is defined in reference to all other numbers. What that means is the sum of everything must also have a reference point, an ultimate reference point, for it to have any meaning whatsoever. That ultimate reference point is God. So if you start with God, you can make rational statements about the universe like you are attempting to do now. The difference between you and me is not fundamentally in the conclusions we reach, but in our starting point. So what you call a leap of faith, I'm saying, has to be your starting presupposition to even believe one other thing about the universe. Otherwise, you're just a blob of protoplasm reasoning into the void with no reason of, thinking that anything you're saying is either going to be rational, let alone true.
So then would you consider science a religion of its own?
No, science is not a religion. Science is a tool of gaining knowledge. Scientism can have aspects of a religion, but that's where you think that science, you sort of elevate science to sort of a religious dogma level, where you're like, science is going to give us all the answers, and the only truth we can get is from science. I didn't hear you saying that. You asked me if I thought science was a religion. I said no.
Hey guys, other people with that.
All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks, Floken.
Yeah, it's nice seeing you. Have a nice day.
Same to you, man.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.